Speaking about friendship, and we've decided to invite three couples, friends, who are really long-time friends. First, I want to please join me in welcoming Mr. Harold and Bonnie Price. They've been married for 63 years. They have 4 children, 17 grandchildren, and 14 great-great-grandchildren. That's pretty awesome. Or great-grandchildren. I had the extra great, so sorry. Big family. They both became Christian, gave their lives to Jesus after they were married. And Harold, for the last 11 years, offers Bible studies at 2 correctional facilities here in Michigan. Incredible ministry. Would you please join me in welcoming to Cornerstone Harold and Bonnie Price? Harold, thank you. Yep. Second, Todd and Carol Vandengucci, married 31 years. Yes. They met when they were 16 years old in their vacation cottages with their families. So when you meet someone at 16, you don't know what's going to happen, right? Married 31 years, 4 children. One of them is a senior here. They describe themselves as being completely opposite to each other, and yet the Lord has blessed their marriage in beautiful ways. Would you please join me in welcoming Todd and Carol Vandengucci? Carol, great to have you here, Carol. Thank you. Good to see you. And last, 2 friends who've been friends almost 25 years. They met through their girlfriends, who one was roommates here. They were roommates. One was only here for a year. The other one was here, graduated. But after that, these 2 women brought these 2 men together, married. Incredible friendship of 21, 22 years now. Lifelong friends, fathers, family. One's a track star from Cornerstone. Would you please join me in welcoming Jeremy Underwood, yes, and Kyle Greenwood. I got those right. Okay. Welcome. Take a seat. Thank you. Well, I want to thank all of you. Would you please join me in thanking all of these friends of ours one more time? Thank you. We want to speak about the art of friendship and how do we become more Christ-like friends. And you 3 have incredible journeys. And I'd like us to, maybe you can share with the students how you met. I gave a little bit of a Jeremy and Kyle, but maybe you both can start. How did you meet? And let's just start that way, and then we can go to Harold and Bonnie and Todd and Carol.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy, and we met. I went to Cornerstone. My wife went to Cornerstone, and my wife was roommates with Kyle's wife, and that's how we met. So we're friends. We're not together. Just to clarify.
That's Jeremy really wanted us to know that. Very important.
I know it's 2024, but I want to be clear. Yeah, and that friendship over 20 years has just grown and developed through lots of changes that everybody goes through, right? Getting married, having kids, career changes, and all of that stuff. And Kyle and I have been friends through it all, and it's been awesome. It's been a huge blessing to my life and to me and Shannon. So.
And you both attend the same church too, yes? Great. Thank you. Harold, Bonnie? Yes.
Okay. He gave this to me. Told me I had to do this. We both grew up in the same little town, little village. I won't tell you where it's at because there might be somebody here from there. And we went to the same high school together and just started dating after we both brought a high school. And that's went from there.
Great. Anything you want to add to that, Harold?
We met, and I felt there was something different about Bonnie immediately, and fell deeply in love with her in the first few months of our dating, and that's how it all began.
Great, beautiful.
Never lost a glimmer.
Todd, Carol?
I'm gonna let Carol start because I'll probably get something wrong. So I'll fill in any blanks.
So we met at our parents, both our parents had cottages up on Big Star Lake. So it was during the summer. I don't know, we just hung out together with a group of people, and about a month later, then he asked me out, and been together ever since. I don't know.
Yeah, I think of like the age that a lot of you are at, and yeah, you don't know. I mean, we were just hanging out at the cottage, and it just kind of moved from there to the next step and the next step. But yeah, I went to Cedarville College, is where I ended up first, and then ended up graduating from Cornerstone. And yeah, so we had some distance as part of our dating relationship, and yeah, we got married, I think, I went to school here during my junior year. So
Thank you.
Cornerstone.
Thank you. I want to ask all of us to think about the beauty of friendship and relationships, but also the difficulty. Friendships are hard. Relationships are hard. There are a lot of forces that can pull you apart. It can happen at any place like Cornerstone. It can happen in churches. It can happen in homes and families and marriages. Now I want to ask this question to the men. There's a lot of conversation today about how difficult it is for men to have friendships, meaningful relationships, and it's very difficult. Tell us how you've done it. As friends, as partners, how have you worked through that, the apparent difficulty it is for men to have intimate, close relationships and friendships? What have you done to break through that and to maintain strong relationships and marriages and friendships?
Guess I'm going. So I'd say the biggest thing for men typically is pride. Men have generally a lot of pride that they deal with putting themselves out there to meet a new friend. So getting that out of the way is big, and then having grace and forgiveness for when your friends don't meet your expectations. Just being able to get past that and move on.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I could second that. I also think finding friendships that are centered around God, centered around Jesus, right? I mean, when I look at a lot of the relationships and friendships, relationship with Kyle, other friendships that I've had with men, a lot of those have been centered around the church and where I go. And my closest friends that have been there through thick and thin, most of them have come through meeting in the church. And I think the church that we go to now, I've never been in a church setting where I'm around as many men that challenge me weekly. Like, I thought I was a good person. And then I meet these guys, I'm like, holy cow, they stretch me to be better. And I've never been in an atmosphere like that where I feel like I'm stretched as much as I am at our church. And we have a lot of godly men that are in Scripture every week. And to me, that's been huge as far as just keeping me on the straight and narrow, is having godly friends.
Harold.
Yeah, since we're talking to a youth, a young population here, I have a significant thing that occurred in my life in terms of friendship at an early age. I was 18 years of age, and I wasn't living the best life at that point. And one evening I made a decision that saved my life. And I think that's significant for you to understand. I worked in a gas station all through high school and weekends, pumping grass, 16 cents a gallon, would you believe?
Those were the good old days, Harold.
Okay. We're about as old as Noah, so I mean. But at any rate, I was working that evening, and one of my close friends came into the station and wanted to wash his car, so I helped him wash his car. And in the meantime, I had an older cousin who'd come in, and he said, you young people wouldn't do that, but back then we used to coon the farmer's watermelon. And he says, so we're going to go get some melons later. I said, well, I can't close the station until 9 o'clock. And so they agreed to come back and pick me up. At any rate, Robert came in, and I told him, you know what we're going to do? And he said, no, he didn't care to go. He said, I don't like to drink. I said, I tell you what, Bob, if you don't want to drink, I won't drink. It's the done deal. He said, okay, I'll go. So at 9 o'clock rolled around, and my cousin came in and picked us up. At that time, he had his girlfriend with him and a younger brother and another best friend. This night before all this, real quick, Reader's Digest version, I had double dated Bon and I with another couple from a little burg we lived in, Freeport, and he was on his way home from dropping his girlfriend off in Grand Rapids and was headed east on M50. My cousin, as he often did, blew a stop sign. You just flip off your lights, and then you can tell if anyone's coming from the opposite, or, parallel, crosswise, and they collided, and it killed 3 of my best friends that I went all through high school with. John Miller, who had just enrolled in Huntington College, become a pastor, Robert Lentz, and William Rose. So I had been in the car with them, okay? When they picked me up at 9 o'clock, the first thing this girlfriend did is handed me a bottle of beer. I gave it back to her. I said, I'm not drinking tonight. Bob and I are out. You guys can do what you want. My cousin drove 1 block, turned around, pulled in front of the bar to go in and buy more beer. I got out of the car and walked, and they called me all kinds of names your mother wouldn't be proud of. But I walked away. I made a decision, a commitment that I wasn't going to drink. Bob, who wanted that, didn't stand tall, and he lost his life. There are times when we have split decisions that we make that we don't think is going to be monumental, but that one saved my life. And not only that, but it changed my whole perspective on life, and I started to think about things from a different, larger, bigger picture perspective.
Carol, thank you. Todd.
Tough to follow that one. So I think one of the things that I would add to like what Kyle said was you have to make an effort. So I think Carol and I were talking about this last night. And maybe it's maybe more so for men. Again, because I don't remember which one you guys said it, but pride. We just, by nature, at least many of us, think we can just do stuff on our own. Fix it ourselves, do it ourselves. We don't need help, so we don't ask for directions. We'll wander around and drive in circles, not asking for directions, And it's kind of like that in life too. One of the things that happened, like for me, several years ago, was just a really good friend of mine put a event together, I'll call it, where he pulled together. At that time, it was about 4 of us, that just knew each other from either churches, again, the church connection there, previously, pulled 4 or 5 of us together. Well, now it's grown to a group of about 9 of us. We call it the Gathering. We're from quite a few different places in the United States, but we get together one time a year for a weekend, and we spend that whole weekend together just praying for each other, like mentoring each other, iron sharpens iron, kind of that type of thing. That's been really, really good. But then it's also led into we stay in touch weekly the rest of the year. So that group of guys has been huge as far as having that connection and having that relationship with them on a weekly basis. So that's been key. And then church again too. I would 100% agree with that. Find a church, plug in, that is a solid church and helps you grow, because you'll develop really good relationships through that.
Humility and good choices. And Carol and Bonnie, if you could follow up on that, the relationships with women and females and friends, what are the kinds of things they can pull you apart and how do you stay close? You know, the men have talked about pride as one of those things that we all face as men. Lack of humility, the importance of church, courageous choices, Harold, you've made. They're incredible. Thank you for sharing that incredible story. So Carol and Bonnie, what would you say about that in your lives as women having friends?
Well, excuse me. Every day I always ask God to show me somebody that I can befriend wherever I go. I'm not sure everybody likes my approach, but a couple of weeks ago I was at a grocery store and, well, it was Aldi's, and the girl was done with her cart. I said, "You want me to take that?" And I tried to give her a quarter for it, and she said no. She was, I don't know, just something about her. I just thought, you know, she needs a hug. She was a black girl, which I love black people. I love them all. And I said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she said, "Oh, absolutely." So I gave her a hug, and she looked at me and she said, "You know what? I needed that today." And I thought, see, Lord, you guided me to somebody that needed a hug today. And every opportunity I try to make a friend. I have friends at Sam's Club. I was telling my daughter about this morning that Sam's Club in Muskegon, the girl that checks your little slip as you go out, I've become a real good friend of hers, and we give each other hugs every time I see her. And I guess if you want friends, you have to be friendly. I think that might be scripture. But I don't know, just making friends is fun for me. I look forward to it. And I'll probably have a lot of enemies, but I have more friends than I do enemies. So,
Thank you, Bonnie. Carol?
I'm probably opposite of Bonnie. I'm more introverted. Todd's my best friend, so I actually don't have a lot of like female friends. So as I've gotten older, but I love her question, and it's something I've learned to do is just to pray and ask the Lord, like, show me, like maybe what does this person need? How can I be of value to them? And learning to ask some deeper questions and not just stay surfacey. And as my spiritual life has grown, my love for people has grown. So I think for me, it starts with that, like knowing Christ more and being intentional and learning to ask good questions.
You know, for all of us to discuss, I received a call this morning from someone at the Cornerstone who was praying for us today, and this individual shared with me, you know, greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. Sometimes the forces outside of us can seem so intense to pull us apart, whether it's a marriage or a friendship. Share with us how you worked through those struggles, those very real forces that are outside of us, sometimes even within us, that want to pull us apart, pull us away from the Lord, pull us away from one another. In my own marriage, when I sense that, one of the first things I do is I humble myself. I go to my wife and say, "Honey, I'm feeling this thing. Let's work through this." And likewise, and just bring it to the Lord. But how have you worked through that in friendships, in relationships? Because those forces are real to pull us apart, to tear our relationships apart, to tear our community apart. How have you overcome those? What's the struggle been like? What do you recommend for us as all of us work through those things as well in our own relationships?
Moreno, I believe there's a language of love. A lot of things are not what is said, but how it's said. But I think it's important that we don't trust our emotions. We can make all the deposits in the wrong places, you know. So if we trust our emotions, we're viable to become an argumentative or defensive. We forget the fact that this lady is imago Dei. She's created an image of God, and I have a respect for her because I view her through that image. So Bon and I refuse to argue. we don't always agree. She'd be the first to tell you. I have difficulty in hearing, so she doesn't hear some of what I say, and I don't hear most of what she says. So it can become
Bonnie, you'll have a chance to respond in a minute. I promise.
things can be like sandpaper, you know, a little rough, abrasive, but you have to be willing to be humble. And, you know, for me, I will say to Bon, you know, I never accuse her of anything, but I might say, well, this is the way that makes me feel. So I'm taking the blunt by, I might be wrong by the way what she might say impacts me. So I try to put the onus on myself if I can. But I'm making a kind of a recommendation, if you know what I mean.
Bonnie, go ahead, Bonnie. You need to respond, Bonnie.
Well, I guess to say the fact, he is honest about that he can't hear. What? Yeah, my daughter gives me this little saying, just let it roll off your back, Mom. Just let it roll with the flow. But we don't argue. We really don't. Like you said, we have differences, but we don't argue about it. I just walk away.
You have to be that honest.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Thank you. Jeremy, Kyle, tell us about your friendships. I mean, things that tear apart, and how have you worked through that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we argue much anymore, or maybe ever.
Let's talk about the time you did. How's that?
What's that?
The times you did, how did you work through it?
Usually we just maybe make fun of each other more than argue with each other. But yeah, I'd say now it's more of checking in with each other periodically. How are you really doing? How's your marriage? How's things with your kids? That's more of our conversations now. It's more what's going on in your kids' lives than it is us arguing or disagreeing about things. We definitely disagree about things at times, but it's nothing that separates us at this point.
No, and going to your question about outside forces that can come between relationships, at least in my experience, I've seen two different types of outside forces. One is like physical things that actually happen, right? Like things that are going on in life that physically happen in the sense of, for a big thing early on in our friendship was my wife lost her mom and dad, and so we adopted her brother and sister. And then I got fired the next day for my job, which was awesome. And Kyle was there for me. And it's weird because when I looked at it at the time, he would just call me or text me and say, hey, do you want to go out and get half off appetizers at Applebee's? We had a lot of time at Applebee's for a good stretch there. And at the time, it was just, he didn't do anything, but he just listened, right? And I didn't understand how much I needed that until 10 years later. Looking back, I'm like, that was huge for me to help me process and get through things. So that was the kind of like physical circumstances that were happening in life. The other side, I think, is more of the emotional side or mental side, where I think that sometimes we take offense to things. And I heard a long time ago, I think there was a book, you might know, is it Bait of Satan? Don't quote me on that. But there was a book that talks about offense can't be given, offense can only be taken. Like you can only receive offense. And sometimes I think that emotionally in our mind or mentally, we think Kyle did something or said something to get under my skin or to bother me. And we build up this big wall or barrier, and it's all just in our head. And then if I actually talked to him and said, hey, what do you mean when you said that? It might have just been, oh, I was just joking. Or, oh, I didn't mean anything at all. Like I actually was trying to compliment you. And here I am turning into this big offense. I think that in friendships, mentally we make up offenses by something that somebody says, and then that builds a wedge between your friendship. And the only way to get through that is to be open and share your feelings with, hey, that sounds weird, sharing feelings. But being honest and saying, hey, what did you mean by this? And then just talk through it, and literally like 10 seconds later, you're good, and we're playing golf or whatever, and everything is hunky-dory.
Great. Todd, Carol?
There's three things that come to mind, I think, that pull us apart. One would be not being intentional about spending time together. And we went through a really rough patch for a number of years where I think we kind of used money as an excuse. We didn't spend time like going on dates. And we were busy with kids. So we just, I don't know, we were like two ships passing in the night. So we talked about our calendar, I think, for most of the time. And then for our 25th anniversary, we went away. We went away for 2 weeks, just the two of us. And I remember saying to my neighbor, I don't know if I'm excited about this, to spend time with him, just him for 2 weeks. I was kind of nervous about it because but we went away and it was like we were dating all over again. It was the best thing ever. And so we just realized you have to spend that time together. And ever since then, we now do it and look forward to it. So being intentional about spending time together. And then unmet expectations. If you do not talk about what you expect, then you just assume, like I might assume the evening's gonna go one way, and I don't tell him what I'm thinking. So by the end of the night, I'm kind of stewing because he did spent time working and so, but if I had told him, we've kind of learned through error. Now I'll call him like, hey, what do you have to do tonight? And here's what I want to do, and we'll schedule it out. We're like, okay, at 8 o'clock, we're gonna meet and we're gonna do something together, and you can do your work stuff from 7 to 8. And so that's a big one. And then another one is just giving him the grace to fail, because he's not perfect, only Jesus is perfect, which it took me a long time to learn that. I thought before we got married that he would fulfill all those longings I had and everything would be perfect. And I realized, no, only my relationship with Jesus and who he is to me is perfect. So just knowing he's going to fail me, and it's okay. So give him the grace to fail, intentional with our time, and what was the third? Oh, and communication.
Yeah, I think, hopefully you guys are taking notes so you don't spend 29 years figuring out what we just told you. So, yeah, the big thing is, like, I think I would add to it is and obviously we all have different relationships sitting on this stage, but like, we're definitely different than Bonnie and Harold in that being honest, we'll argue. So if we disagree with each other, we fight quick. So we always resolve it. But Carol and I mean, you can ask our kids. We'll argue and we'll figure it out and we'll sort through it, and then that's been, I think that for us, that's been good. As far as making sure that we resolve it, making sure that we have the conversation, and don't just sweep it under the rug and think it's going to just take care of itself. So,
I want to ask you all about anger. The scripture speaks about don't let the sun go down upon your wrath, and the importance of ensuring that anger is not seated in our hearts for the next day. There's something about that process that can cement that in us. So share with us how you work through that, not necessarily in these relationships, but any relationship you have with other friends. You've all mentioned already the temptation to become angry, the mental things that we assume that we build up and then we react in a particular way. Just anger, how destructive it can be. How have you worked through that in your relationships with the Lord, in your horizontal relationship with other people, to ensure that your friendships and relationships don't become eroded?
I kind of just touched on that a little bit, but again, I think it goes back to what a few of us have said. So we, as human beings, all have expectations. And when you think about anger or anger towards someone else, a lot of times it's rooted in expectations or unmet expectations. So again, a couple of us have said it, but being honest, like, so in your relationships, whether it's a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, professional, you have to start out with honesty. Because if you're not honest about how you're feeling, what you heard, because what you heard may not be what was said, and you have to work through those things and resolve them. If you just carry them and don't have an honest conversation with that person, it will just grow and fester and gets ugly.
Jeremy, Kyle?
I've been married 17 years, not to Jeremy, just to be clear again. And I've found that when that anger comes up in me with my wife, it's usually that we just need to have a conversation and get on the same page. There's something off, either the way I received it, usually the way I received it more than what she said, and we just have to talk about it. And honestly, I'm pretty quick to forgive once that conversation happens.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, except for I was just going to say forgiveness, and you just said that at the end. I generally don't get that angry, hardly ever, except when the Lions lose. Yep. So forgiveness is huge. I think people hold on to unforgiveness for too long, and that festers and builds up.
Yep. Carol, you mentioned something very beautiful and important for us to think about, that Jesus really is the only perfect friend. And he's the only one who can meet all of our expectations. And there is that temptation in relationships, whether it's marriage or friends, that we have deep-sized holes, Jesus holes, and we want things or people or to meet those. How have you all continued to work to ensure and to work toward, by God's grace, for Jesus to be central in the spaces of your friendships and relationships? It doesn't come easy, I'm sure. It's something we have to continue to work, but how have you done it throughout your lives, your marriages, your relationships, your friendships, so on? How have you done that? Because that seems to be the central piece here. We go to the Lord and allow him to be the one who satisfies and meets our needs. He's our shepherd. We will lack nothing with him. But how do we do that in relationships?
Yeah, I love that question, and your sharing with that was the same conversation I've had with my wife. Like, I'm far from perfect. Don't ever put me on that pedestal and expect me to be perfect or close to perfect, right? So I think that, I don't know if you call it priorities, but God first. Seek me first, and all this will be given unto you, right? And if you ever start to put a friendship or a marriage or any person above your relationship with God, then it's out of order. It's out of how things are supposed to be, and it's going to put that unintended pressure on that person of expectations and whatever. So I think putting God first in any relationship is going to help make that relationship you have so much more fruitful and so much better in your life.
Bonnie. Yes, you.
Well, I always think of that. I know this is quite simple, but remember the little bracelets they used to wear, WWJD? And I always think of that. I always think, in this situation, what would Jesus do? You know, would he keep arguing? Would he keep judging? Would he keep getting angrier? No, love cast out all that. And, you know, Jesus, I love that verse that we just went through. Don't tell me that you love God and you hate your brother, because you can't love God and not get along with other people and love other people. It just doesn't happen that way. And I think the examples that Christ has given us to love one another is so important. Yeah, we're human beings. I mean, Jesus even got angry, but we're just human beings going through life. And, well, like I was talking this morning with Harold and my daughter, that we have no idea where other people are coming from, if they have anger or what their morning was like, and we just have to be willing to, you know, what would Jesus do in this situation?
Harold, can you share with us a little bit about your relationships with the men you serve in correctional facilities? I mean, these are broken men in many ways.
Yeah.
broken relationships, parents, friends, and how has the Lord used you and the choices you've made, marriage, all these things to serve and minister to these men who many of them are broken in so many ways and want to be healed? How have you worked through that with them?
Just a little insight real briefly. My first day of class, typically have a class for 6 months to a year. Same group of men. Usually there's 30 in each class. Sometimes I teach 2 classes piggyback, so I'm dealing with 6. But I give them a 3x5 recipe card and I ask them to do 2 things. Please write your name, not your number. Your name, that's what I'm going to remember you by, in the upper right-hand corner of this card, and write me a prayer request that you have. Or if you don't think that I will legitimately pray for you, my wife and I, every day, just write something that's kicking the slacks out of your life. One statement. I've taught approximately 600 men in 11 years. I've had one man ask me to pray for his father. One man. And that prayer was that he might have a relationship with his father. I get all kinds of prayers for grandmas and moms, but families are broken, fragmented. Okay? These men grow up with no father image. They grew up, most of them, in the streets. It's a hard life. So I try to show them love and compassion and give them practical examples of how Bon and I work through issues, how life works, and it can work for them. It's like you build a house or any building, you have to have the foundation. Lay the foundation, and Christ is the most important key. Here's where your foundation starts. You build the foundation is laid for you. You respond to Christ, and then you start to build this home, this structure. And you can transition that. The Bible is full of images, pictures, concepts. And picture this as your life. You're building your home. Here's how you can impact your family. Yesterday, I encouraged the men to write a letter to their daughter, to a son, to their mother. I've asked them to do that for their father. Just practical ways that they can build the bridge between the foundation and how life works from the home.
Todd, you work for a construction company, yes? Yes. So share with us in your work as you serve and minister to men and staff, how have you built strong relationships?
So just a funny little story that ties in with that. I would say all of them probably know, maybe not some of the newer guys, but all of them, for the most part, know that I'm a believer, know that I go to church, know that that's important to our family. A couple of my sons have worked there in the summer, so they've got a pretty good sample of like just who our family is. One of the fun things that happens, it may seem really simple, but they will, it's not ask the pastor, but it's ask the Christian guy. They'll get talking about something I work for Weather Shield Roofing Systems. We do commercial roofs. We actually do work for the school here too. But so
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a rough bunch of guys. But they'll get talking about Christian things or church or Bible things. They have no idea what they're talking about usually. And they'll be like, let's call Todd. And so, yeah, those phone calls are really fun. When you get just this off-the-wall, what they think is off-the-wall phone call about something that is either Christ-related or Christian-related or the Bible. A lot of times it happens around Easter. And so it's fun to, I guess, know that they know that there's something different in me and how I live. And it makes a difference in how I can have a conversation with them, have a relationship with them. Yeah.
Yeah. They trust you.
Trust.
Todd, Carol, Harold, Bonnie, Jerry McCall, thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing so many things, being so transparent. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Students, thank you. May the Lord bless you the rest of your day. You're dismissed.